Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Build Your Copywriting Business podcast. Hey there, Kate.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
I mean, that sounded less upbeat than it should have. I'm sorry.
You want to try it again?
Just trying something different. No, I don't.
Okay. Well, it's it was a thing. We'll see.
Yep.
We'll say stay tuned next week to see how
my
Kate
hellos come out.
Does it differently. I like it. Okay, so today we are going to dig into a topic that I think in one way may be plaguing people, and in another way, people might be worrying about something they will never have to deal with at all. Our topic today is how to deal with the haters and the doubters.
Cue Taylor Swift. No, that's just, we say haters and the haters going to hate. Just, you're going to shake it off just like we are.
Thanks, Taylor. Yeah. Meaning thanking her and also thanking you. But they're really kind of two, we'll dig into the topic in two different ways. The kind of the in-house haters and doubters, which is often actually literally in-house. It's the people who love you, the people who want the best for you. Sometimes maybe not even the people who, just thinking of in-laws, maybe they kind of love you, but they're just, people who are close to you, the people that you know in person. That's the first haters and doubters we're going to talk about. Then we're going to talk about the second one, the haters and doubters online or strangers or people you haven't actually met yet. Okay, let's dig in. Let's start with in-house or, in your social circles, the haters and the doubters in the social circles. Where do you see this come up a lot, Kate? Or where do we see it come up most?
I think most often, and this happens with folks, not maybe a handful in the CCA group who've just shared, hey, I started this and my spouse, often a spouse, partner, loved one, is very fearful about this journey. They've maybe never heard of copywriting because let's face it, most of us hadn't heard about copywriting till we found this program. And so I think because there's an unknown around it of copywriting, what is that? Is that actually a real career? Is that valid? Is that even something you can make money off of? Especially people hear writing and they think, oh, you can't make money as a writer. That's not doable. Or the very handful of people who think, well, copywriting, that's such a hard field to get into. How are you going to make that work? And so I think this comes from, again, fear, the unknown, uncertainty, people who genuinely love and want the best for us. And they're going about it in a way that's letting their fear kind of overshadow and take over your hopes, dreams, etc. It's not coming from a bad place. It's coming from a very, very well-intentioned place, but nonetheless can feel very disheartening. It can drag you down. It brings your energy and motivation level down, and certainly then plants the seed of doubt in your mind. This thing that you were so excited about and you were ready to dig into, all of a sudden becomes, oh, maybe they're right. I value and respect this person and their opinion, and they care about me. So if they think this is a bad idea, oh, maybe it is a bad idea. Maybe I should just stick to what I'm doing. I know that works, and just forget about this whole copywriting thing and keep on keeping on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's something that I say a lot, and our students are probably sick of hearing me say it, but I want to say it anyway. And that is that you should only take advice from people who are successful at what you want to do. Meaning, and actually, really, when I first figured this out, I was listening to one of my friends who's just perpetually single give advice to another friend who is in a relationship, and thinking to myself, wait a minute. Why on earth should she take? So don't take advice. Don't take relationship or marriage advice from your perpetually single friend. Don't take business advice from your cousin Jim, who's never owned a business. Don't take copywriting or freelancing advice from someone who has never been a copywriter, especially someone who didn't even know existed, and someone who has never had a successful freelancing career. Because there are certainly people out there who have failed at freelancing. Don't take advice from someone who has failed at freelancing, or you'll find this a lot less, but someone who's failed at copywriting. Because there are steps to be successful. It's not nearly as hard as people think it is, but they don't know. Everybody has opinions, but it's when you actually stop to think about it, very few of people's opinions are actually based on any kind of expertise or knowledge. So make sure that as you are listening to someone, because it's probably very unlikely that you can say, just stop talking to me, stop. Although we'll come up with advice in just a moment. But just be discerning about what is behind this. Because again, to Kate's point, if it is your spouse, if it's someone, it could be that they're concerned about you. They want to make sure that you don't go down a risky path, certainly. But is it coming from expertise? Or is it coming from fear? Sometimes we'll hear it, not even just copywriting, but sometimes we'll hear people say, oh, you're going to learn something off the internet. That's not even a thing. It's probably a scam. And there are, quite frankly, well, not just our course, but the online training industry is blowing up in the best possible way. It is huge, and it's quite frankly a great way to learn skills. But there are also still some people who are not in that industry who are like, you can't learn anything online. You have to go to college to learn a career. You have to do, and it's an old-fashioned way of thinking, but there's still plenty of people. And maybe it's your significant other, maybe it's your parents or their parents or any number of people around you that, oh, watch out for the scams. But again, and it's they don't want you to be hurt. They don't want you to be disappointed. They don't want you to risk anything. If they don't have the expertise, just be discerning about, you can listen to their opinions without taking them in. And you can say, thank you so much for your opinion. I'll definitely consider that, without actually considering it. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, absolutely. Thank you. You don't even have to go down the road of, I hear you and I'm going to prove you wrong. You can, if that's your vibe. A lot of people, that's not a lot of people's vibe. If it is, go for it. But if not, just a simple of, absolutely, I understand. I will be careful, but I'm going to keep pursuing this. That is a perfectly reasonable way to respond.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad you brought up the freelancing specifically, because I think obviously copywriters, CCA students do know you can create your career however you want. You can go in-house, you can go to an agency, you can do contract, you can do freelance, you can dabble in all of it, you can move to one and the other and back, all of it. So many options. And you don't have to do it forever. You can switch back and forth throughout your entire career. I think with freelancing in particular, and it's getting better, and it's certainly gotten better the past few years, but there's still so many people in our lives who have had the traditional career trajectory of I go to a company, I do great work, that company is going to reward me for that great work, and I'm going to move up and get a promotion. Maybe I'll switch companies after a few years, and I have to be at this company for at least a couple of years because that looks bad on a resume. And all of this very traditional, outdated advice that isn't necessarily true anymore, but still is in the very deep, just in the core of how people operate, because it's very hard to break out of that when everyone in your life has done this kind of work your way up the career ladder type of career. First things first, company is not going to take care of you and just promote you like that. I think that's the first trap people fall into, is that that's just not, companies are looking out for their bottom line and their best interest. And if you're part of that, great. But if you're not, they have no problem in cutting you. And I don't mean that to sound callous. It's just how businesses operate. It's the way of the world. And so freelancing is certainly it's not risky like people think, but they have this idea and mindset. And so if you're planning on not only copywriting and maybe switching careers into this career that people don't know about, and on top of that, you want to be a freelance copywriter that people, again, don't have as much experience and insight into what freelancing is and how to do it in a way that is effective and fundamentally not risky, and frankly, much better than putting all of your eggs in one basket. That's then two things and two hurdles you're kind of overcoming with people around you that love and care about you, is that there's not only just the career switch, but the freelancing, how you're doing it, that they don't understand and maybe are fearful about. And so know that you're doing something that frankly is very, very brave, and a lot of people wish they could do. I think there's an element of that too, sometimes with loved ones, particularly people who aren't as close to us, who see us doing it and think, well, I wish I could do that, but it's so scary. And they project all of their anxieties and worries onto you. But at their core, they're wishing that they had the chutzpah to go ahead and try something like this. And I think that can manifest itself in some weird ways where it comes out less than supportive. Because yes, the people closest to us are going to cheer on our successes and want us to succeed and are going to be so happy when we do. But there are certain people who just don't like seeing other people succeed, and they will put that on you in whatever way that they might do that.
Yeah, exactly. And you can't change anyone. You might, well, how do I change their mind? How do I change their mind? You may be able to, as you are successful, you know, your significant other or whomever may say, wow, you really made this work. And actually we'll put a link to a podcast episode we did with one of our students, Adele. And it's actually a podcast episode with her then fiance, now husband. He joined us on the podcast because he was very doubtful. I think his words were like, come back to me when this turns out to be a scam. And so I won't spoil anything, but hearing their interaction is very cool now.
Such a good episode. Yeah.
Such a good episode. But you know, you may, for the more supportive people, as you are successful at it, as you start landing clients and they may say, I'm so proud of you. That's great. But there are also people who just may not be supportive people, and you do not have the capability to change other people. Well, how do I get them to think differently? How do I get them to talk to you? Can't. You can't. That is part of being human. You cannot change other people. But what you can do is focus on yourself, do what makes you happy, do what you find fulfilling, and be successful in the goals that you are pursuing. Focus on yourself, and they can focus on themselves, whether they choose to or not.
And surround yourself with people who get what you're doing. And I think that's CCA students, you know that you can always use the Facebook group and coaching calls, and people do. And it's such a wildly supportive, it's a beautiful corner of the internet. It's just, everyone is so genuinely good. And having people who get what you're going through, and so get these moments, and you can share that, and people are like, oh my gosh, I've been through that too. It just makes you feel less alone. And so if you're listening and not part of the CCA, and you're going down this path, know that you're not alone, that people encounter all of this is, I don't want to say it's normal, because frankly, it shouldn't be normal, but there's always just going to be people that kind of
don't get it,
unload on you. Yes. And don't get what you're doing, but know that there are people that get what you're doing and are there to support you and cheer you on, and, have been through some of these same hurdles.
Yeah. There's one more corner of the in-person group that I want to talk about. And I think that people are often really afraid of this group. And that is friends, people outside of your immediate circle, maybe previous colleagues. And we find often that students are afraid to tell people that they have started a new career.
Changing their LinkedIn.
Exactly. Oh, and people ask me what I'm doing now, but I'm afraid to tell them I'm a copywriter. And often for our students, we'll say, look, it doesn't have to be a big step. Just start telling people, oh, I'm a copywriter now, or, oh, I'm training to be a copywriter, or, oh, I'm starting up a copywriting business on the side. They're often afraid that people are going to judge them negatively for some reason. And if this is you, I would encourage you to take a moment and think, why are you assuming that people are going to judge you negatively? What is negative about starting a new career? What is negative about starting a freelance business on the side that has become so incredibly common? What is negative? What are you afraid that people are going to say? Because I think what you will find much more often than not is people think it's really cool. Yeah. People, to your point, Kate, people go, oh, wow, good for you. How did you get started in that? Oh, how's that going for you?
Or, oh, I have a copy project. We actually need a copywriter. My company needs someone. Can I hire you? That happens all the time.
All the time. Exactly. So if you were thinking, well, all right, I'll tell my significant other, I'll tell my parents, I'll tell my best friend, but I'm not going to tell anybody else. My question is, why? What do you think?
I'm afraid to fail, Nicki. I think that's sometimes where it comes from, of that idea of like, well, if this doesn't work out though, But what I would say to that is, one, everyone's paying much, 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 much closer attention to themselves than they are to you. And I say that in the most loving way possible. Hopefully that unlocks a world of opportunity for you. Or that's what I remind myself anytime I'm hesitant to do something. I'm like, no one's actually paying attention. No one actually, I'm the only one that cares about this.
Yeah.
And if anyone does care, that's more a reflection of them than me. And so, and the only way that you can quote unquote fail is if you stop. And that's the only way. And so even if you did decide to stop and you said, okay, you know what, actually I'm going to pursue something else, no one's going to notice.
Yeah. Nobody's going to notice. Nobody's going to care. Big deal. And we actually have an episode about failure that we will link to. And please listen to that if you haven't listened to it yet. Put it next on, go download it now, put it on your playlist next. It's a very important one to hear because that fear of failure is absolutely real, but you need to know what that actually means. But yeah, we do have some students who have pursued copywriting and then have ended up in a slightly different or slightly adjacent career. We have some student interviews where they're doing something that's not exactly copywriting, something kind of different, or copywriting helped open the door to it. Yep. That certainly does not mean that they failed, or even if you start pursuing copywriting and then you realize, oh, actually, this isn't what I want to do, then you find something else. Does that mean that you have failed? No, it means that you tried something, decided it wasn't for you, and you moved on. And that's true with anything, right? Like, I don't know why this is what's coming to mind, but I bought a pair of roller skates because I thought I was going to make it my regular thing. It turned out not to be something that I wanted to do regularly. Also really impossible to do around here because there are a lot more hills than I realized. I thought it was a lot flatter around here. Actually more dangerous than I thought that it would be. But I might take my best friend's little girls to a
rink.
Roller rink. Thank you. But the point, it doesn't matter. So I tried it. It turned out that wasn't for me. Then I try other things. It doesn't matter. Nobody else cared. Yes, in middle school and high school, everybody was keeping an eye on everybody else. We're not in middle school and high school anymore. Nobody cares. Okay, so that's the kind of the inner circle.
We care. We care about your success.
We care. We very much care. Yes, thank you, Kate. That's a good disclaimer.
We care.
Very much care. But
not in the bad
people
way.
The people that we're concerned are going to judge us or think badly of us for. They don't care. They don't care. And if anything, they're much more likely to say, "Oh, that's cool. How'd you get into that? How'd you decide to? Oh, how did you find that? Oh, where did you? Oh, tell me more about that." So that's kind of the inner circle, haters and doubters. The other group of haters and doubters, I think people are very worried about, and they almost never have to actually deal with. And this is the haters and doubters of people that they have not met yet, the world. So the people that they are connected with on LinkedIn, or maybe the people that they're not connected with on LinkedIn, people on social media that they will never meet, people that they send their pitches to. Newer copywriters especially tend to get very nervous that people are going to judge them harshly, are going to post on, say, how dare you say anything like this? Or who do you think you are to post something like this? Or people are going to respond to their pitches and say, how dare you send this pitch to me? Or how dare you email me? That doesn't, by and large, doesn't happen. And we'll talk about a small segment in which that does happen.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that in just a moment.
Yeah.
But it doesn't happen. When you post on social media and when you post on LinkedIn or web, you're going to be posting your own experience and or you're going to be posting valuable content. And do you know what? People will like that.
Yeah, and of the 10,000 plus students that have gone through the CCI, I think we've had 2 that I've seen that have been responded to with a pitch. They sent a value-based pitch to a client. And it wasn't even, I wouldn't even say, a rage-filled response back. It was kind of just like, how'd you get my email? Don't email me again. Very, very direct to the point. Well, great. Cool. I will take you off my pitch list and say, okay, don't email, don't send a follow-up to this person and don't want to work with this company. Yeah. And I think that's the way to look at that information is that, okay, why would I want to work with someone who's this strung up or hung up on something that I sent them that was value based. Same thing with anything you put on social media. If you're putting valuable information out in the world, or you're just sharing something and someone gets bent out of shape for that, that's much more on them than it is anything about what you posted or shared.
Exactly. That's a them problem, not a you problem. And again, to be clear, that is 2 out of hundreds of thousands of pitches sent. Hundreds of thousands.
Because of those 10,000 students, each one has sent probably dozens and hundreds of pitches over the course of their every year. So
exactly.
The numbers are wild.
The way that we teach you to pitch, and we won't get too deep into this, but we say it's based on providing value. You are stripping out any and all salesiness. You are being helpful. If someone is genuinely bent out of shape about a helpful email, you don't want to work with that person anyway. Yeah. But again, the chances of that happening are so incredibly remote. People do not want to bother sending you back an email if they're upset with you. People are not, it just doesn't, it happens so much less than people are afraid that it will. People are afraid of putting themselves out there. I'm afraid of posting and talking about copywriting. I'm afraid of talking about this project. But you don't want to limit yourself based on what you fear that a bunch of strangers might say, right? If you were walking down the street and there was some guy on the street just shouting things out at random people, would you take that as, oh, that guy knows what he's talking about, I should never walk down the street again? No, of course not. So then why do we let even just the idea that might happen keep us from posting things, keep us from sending our pitches, it doesn't, when you actually break it down, it doesn't actually make any sense. So now there's one small little subsection of things that you could put out into the world that quite frankly, you are relatively likely, if not very likely, to get negative comments on. And what that is if you are running ads for yourself. Obviously, if you're writing ads for a client, that's on them. They post the ads. You may never even see your client's ads if you're not in their target audience. But if you decide to run ads for yourself, and you may never do that, the vast majority of our students never do that. But if you run ads for yourself, I will tell you, as someone that runs ads for our 3 brands, people will post just nasty comments on there. People, and it's almost always overnight, and it's just people getting out their rage on Facebook ads, on Instagram ads. But if you are not ever going to run ads, which actually, quite frankly, it's very unlikely that you will, it's not something you have to worry about. The other stuff, the posting on LinkedIn, the posting on Instagram, it is very unlikely that you're going to get in front of enough strangers that anybody's going to bother to. We get those. Anybody who runs ads gets them, because they go out into the world, and there are some very angry, disturbed people who don't know how to deal with their emotions other than to comment on ads in the middle of the night. That's the one small piece in which, and again, you will likely never encounter it, but I do just want to mention it. Yeah. But all the rest of it, no, it's not even. If I post and tell people, if I say something about my thoughts about copywriting, what if people disagree, or what if people? It's likely not going to happen. Or if they disagree, then you have a conversation in the comments. But it's not going to happen.
Yeah, and I think one thing to think about with all of this, with opinions from people that love us, opinions from complete strangers, feedback, all of it, knowing how to discern constructive feedback versus wildly unconstructive, unhelpful, I don't even want to call it feedback, just trash, really.
We're talking to you, Facebook trolls.
And so I think that's the discernment of, is this a valid question? So I think sometimes and the way people go about saying it, obviously there's a lot of tone myths, certainly online versus in person. There's ways people can ask valid questions that come across better than others. So for example, on the Filthy Rich Writer side, hey, why are you teaching copywriting and why are you teaching copywriting if you're so successful as a copywriter? Is that sometimes it's not worded that nicely and direct, but I do think is there some validity in that question? Sure. Basically, I think what they're really trying to ask is are you really successful as a copywriter? What are your credentials? Are you actually working? Have you made money as a copywriter? And if you go on Nicki's LinkedIn, you can see all of her past experience with various clients, years
I
of
love
freelance
that
experience.
one.
Yeah.
I love that one, because are you saying you'd rather learn copywriting from someone who hasn't been successful at it? Is that, that's the implication? Yes, I do. I love that.
I think
one.
it's a poorly worded question. But all that's to say, so like that's something that's worth answering, yes, and just explaining to people something that they might not have thought about, and that might happen with your loved ones too, of just saying, hey, thanks for what you're saying. I've learned a lot about copywriting, and I know you don't know, you maybe don't know about copywriting, but it is a very valid profession. You don't even have to take the time, as we said earlier, to explain that. But if you want to, and if that person's genuinely interested in learning, then it just might be educating on them on something they don't know about yet. But in terms of feedback, maybe you do, even if it's someone who doesn't know copywriting, maybe they're saying, hey, the only thing I'd say is, you're spending a lot of time on copywriting, and this hasn't quite panned out yet. What's your plan for making sure that we can pay the bills together? If your partner's asking that, that's perfectly valid feedback to say, okay, hey, actually, let's sit down and here's what I've been thinking. What have you been thinking? And get the real concerns out on the table, because I think it's very easy for people to come at you and be like, I don't support this. This is awful. Well, okay, if it's coming from fear, what's behind that fear? Is it finances? Is it that we have bills to pay and I'm concerned that you're going to quit your job and not tell me and go all in on copywriting and we're not going to have a game plan? That's valid, but you need to get there and kind of dig to that sometimes. And hopefully if someone is good at giving you that feedback, then you can say, okay, yes, let's talk about this. Versus, I think the unconstructive is much easier to find, of just like, if you're so successful at teaching copy, why are you teaching? Like, that's obviously, the tone of that is very different, of like, why are you doing this?
Or, and quite frankly, as much as we love Adele and Jake, Kate and I were actually at their wedding, but as much as we love Adele and Jake, his come back to me when this is a scam, not so constructive, right? So she had to take that in and say, okay, I hear you. I'm going to stay focused on this anyway. I'm going to get this done. And again, we won't spoil that episode. Definitely check it out. But it's if there's something that you can take, listen to what people are saying, view it objectively. If there's something useful from it, absolutely use it or consider it. But if it's not, you have to let it go. And that is something that we all have to practice throughout our lives, right? Because we will get unconstructive feedback. We will get unconstructive feedback from other people. We will get it from ourselves. Our students know we have a lot of work in the course about resistance and overcoming resistance, the internal forces that try to keep us from making progress in our lives, from heading toward our goals and the success that we're looking for. So it is not something that comes natural, but it's something that we have to learn to practice, and that we have to improve on if we want to get anywhere in our lives, because there are always going to be people that have less than helpful things to say. And much more often, those less than helpful things to say come from ourselves. So we have to learn to say, all right, I hear that. And sometimes even saying it to ourselves, I hear that. I'm going to keep moving forward on this anyway. Okay, so lots of stuff to think about. But also, I hope that it's made it clear that if you're worrying about the haters in your house, in the world, that there's probably a lot less that you actually have to worry about. And it's not worth it to let other people's opinions hold you back from what you want to do. Because you could live your entire life letting other people's opinions hold you back from what you want to do, because people will always have opinions. There's a dirty statement about everybody's got opinions are like insert the blank. Everybody's got one, and most of them stink. Because we try to keep things G-rated. I will not include what the blank is. But
it's still G-rated if that's.
You can probably figure it out, or you can Google,
Sure.
but it's very true. People will have opinions, but you don't have to choose to listen to those opinions, and you don't have to choose to live your life according to those opinions. And in fact, I would say that if you want to have a life that is driven by your desires and your goals, you can't listen to other people's opinions. Okay, so with that, we will catch you guys in the next episode. Bye, everybody. Like what you heard? Hit subscribe so you never miss a video. And if you're ready to take the first step toward becoming a copywriter yourself, sign up for a free video training right here.